Hey guys, welcome back to a new video which is about Alarm Manager in Android. And in this video, we'll see what Alarm Manager is, how to set it up and use it. But first, let's understand what's the difference between Alarm Manager and Work Manager, because they aim to do the same thing, which is scheduling tasks, even if the app is not active or not running. So a Work Manager is used to schedule background tasks like syncing data, uploading files, downloading files, and so on. And the user won't be aware about these tasks, and also you get the benefit of executing these tasks with constraints, like if you want to sync data, then you need internet connection. So that's a must. If there is no internet connection, you won't sync it. And also, if you have an error, for example, then you have a better error handling with a Work Manager. But a drawback you get with this Work Manager is that you can't schedule these tasks at an exact time, like for example 8 p.m. You can't do that with a Work Manager. You can just, for example, sync data every 1 hour or every day or something like so, but not in an exact time. So you can't use a Work Manager for a reminder. But on the other hand, you get an Alarm Manager, which actually can do that, which is executing tasks at an exact time, like an alarm or a reminder at a specific time in the day. But with an Alarm Manager, you don't get the benefit of those constraints like you have with a Work Manager. For example, you can't check if there is internet connection or so, or you get any error handling. You have to implement your own error handling with an Alarm Manager. So you use Alarm Manager for alarms, reminders, waking up the device to show a notification or so. So these things can be achieved with an Alarm Manager. So now we have a theory between the differences of those two so you don't get confused. But now let's get started with the video. Alright, here I'm in an empty Android Studio project. Now let's go to manifest because we have to add some permissions here. So user permission, and then we have schedule alarm, or schedule exact alarm, rather to say, and then user permission use exact alarm. So we get these two permissions, but we don't have to use both of them. We only need to use one. But when should we use which? So we use this one, which is use exact alarm, when our app is kind of a system app, like an alarm app or a calendar app. So the main functionality of this app is just sending alarms. Like in an alarm app or an alarm clock app, the main functionality is actually waking up the user in the morning, or in a calendar app, reminding the user to do some task or some to do or anything. So you can use this one since that's the main functionality of your app. And then you use schedule exact alarm when your app is not actually such an app that is a system app, like calendar app or an alarm clock app, but any other app that needs to remind the user. For example, you have a social networking app in which you want to remind the user about a live stream that will be on in a specific time on the day, then you need to use this one. And then you need to request this permission from the user so they can allow it or don't allow it. But with this one, you don't have to request it. It's granted by default. So that's the difference between these two. If your app has a functionality of reminding or waking up the device to show a notification or so, then you need to use this one. If your app is an alarm clock app, a reminder, or a calendar app, that's the main functionality of your app, then you can use this one, in which you don't have to ask for it at runtime. Okay, so we know now the difference between these two. And one other thing we need to know is that when your app powers off and booted again, then all your alarms that you set up are gone or are cancelled simply. You need to schedule them again. And what we need to do for that is actually using a broadcast receiver to know when the device is booted up to reschedule our alarms. So for that, we can use this permission, which is actually not this one, receive boot completed. So when your user's device completed booting, then you can actually receive that with a broadcast receiver and then reschedule your alarms, because as I said, when the device powers off, all those alarms that you scheduled are cancelled. So you don't want your user, for example, to set an alarm at 7 in the morning and then their device shuts off or something like that, and then they power it on again, and then just till alarms are gone and you don't wake them up in the morning. That's a bad user experience. You need to reschedule your alarms after a boot. Okay, now let's get started by creating our Alarm Manager class, which is, a class. So Alarm Manager, in which we'll have two functions, which are scheduling an alarm and canceling it. Of course, in a real app, you might need to have a date or a time picker so the user can pick the time in which they want this alarm to fire off. But in our case, we'll just say 5 minutes or 30 minutes from now. Okay, to schedule an alarm, we need context. Private var context. We need to pass that to our class manager right here, or rather say Alarm Manager. Let me just create some space, and then we need to get an Alarm Manager that we can use to schedule those. So private var alarm manager is going to be context.get system service and context.alarm service. That's the service we want as Alarm Manager. Now we can use this one to schedule those alarms. We have an error. Let's see what that is. And it's because I'm actually casting to the same class I have in here. So let me just import that. So that's underway.app.alarm manager. Now I'm still doing that, so let me just actually change the name of this one underweight Alarm Manager or anything like that. So that cancel Alarm Manager. Now the error is gone. Okay, let's get the first function, which is a fun schedule alarm. Alright, here it is. And as I said, in a real app, you may need to pass the time that you want this alarm to fire off in, but in my case, it will be 5 minutes from now. And how do I say 5 minutes from now? So let me just actually say 5 minutes first. So 5 minutes, that's going to be 100 milliseconds, which is a second times 5. Actually, not 5 minutes. 5 minutes is so long, but actually 5 seconds. I'm sorry. So 5 seconds from now, my alarm will fire off. And now let's schedule it. So alarm manager dot set, we get a lot. So what we usually use is this one, set exact and allow while idle. With an alarm manager, we can set alarms that fire off at an exact time. And this is actually what you need when you have an alarm clock app or a calendar app in which you need to remind or notify the user at the exact time of the, I don't know, event or whatever. And also allow while idle means when your device is in idle mode, so in low power mode. You can also fire this alarm off when your device is in low power mode. We have other things like set, which is setting an alarm but not an exact time. So for example, if you say set an alarm 30 minutes from now, it might be 31 minutes from now. So if the time doesn't really matter to be that exact, you can use set. And if it needs to be exact the time the user wants, then you need to use this one. And yes, so let's use that. Also have other ones like alarm manager.set repeating, which is something we'll see. Okay, so right here, what do we need? Let's see that. We need the type of our alarm. We need the trigger at millis, which is the time in which the alarm should be triggered in or fire off. And then the operation, which needs a pending intent. We'll see that as well. So the type, we have actually two types. So alarm manager dot real-time clock wake up and then elapsed real-time wake up. So we'd use this one if we want exact time, which is real-time clock, which is exact time. So usually you want to use this one. And again, if the time is not that important, then you can use this elapsed real-time wake up, which means it will wake up the screen, but also it's not going to be an exact time. So let's say you just want to schedule the alarm every 30 minutes, but not exactly at 8 in the morning or anything like that. Then you can use this one, which actually starts from the very first time the device boots up. And then from there, every 30 minutes, the user will be notified about your alarm. And in our case, let's use real-time clock wake up, which will wake up our device. And then for when it should fire off or the trigger time, it's going to be system clock dot elapsed real time plus our 5 seconds like this. So this means the real time right now, which is 1:20 a.m. and then plus 5 seconds. So 1:20 plus 5 seconds. And again, if this is a real app, then you wouldn't write this, but actually you would get the time from the user from a date or a time picker or, you know, something like when the event is going to happen or something like so. Okay, here we need the pending intent. And let's actually create that. Why do we need that pending intent? Because the action or the operation is not just like a lambda function that you do something when this alarm fires off. This thing can be sending a notification or showing a notification, starting a service, starting a broadcast receiver, or just showing a screen that has a clock, something you need to either cancel it or something like so. You need a pending intent for that. Because what's going to happen is that the system is going to send a pending intent to your alarm manager here, and then based on what you specify in your pending intent, that's exactly what's going to happen. So we can start a broadcast receiver, a service, an activity, or whatever you want with this pending intent. So val pending intent, and we usually just use either services or broadcast receivers. So val, now let's create an actual broadcast receiver, pending intent dot get broadcast. We need to pass the context, the ID. So this needs to be unique for every pending intent. And then what are we going to start? So let's just create a receiver. So let's say alarm receiver that extends broadcast receiver like this. We have one function to implement, which is this on receive. In this one, let's just create a log. Let's say alarm manager, so manager app, and then alarm received like this. Okay, and we can do the same with the service. So we can also create an alarm service. That's going to be a class again that extends, of course, service. And we have one function to implement. So return null, on bind, we don't care about that. What we care about is on start command. So it could be the same here by just actually printing that, something like that. In my case, I'm going to use a broadcast receiver. That's what I use the most. So even if we want to send some action with our pending intent, then we can of course get that action from here. So intent dot action, or if we get any extra dot get extra whatever boolean we send with our intent. Okay, and in here of course we can either show notification starts as a service if we want to, or do whatever we want. Okay, so intent passing the context and then our receiver. So it is alarm receiver double common class.java and then the flag. So the flag just represents how this pending intent is going to be treated. So let's say pending intent dot flag immutable or mutable. If we use immutable, then this one won't change. If we use, for example, flag cancel current, then that means if we send a pending intent with the same ID, then it will cancel the new one and use the old one. If we use update current, then it means it will update it. Let's just use immutable and then passing our pending intent. Great. So we successfully just scheduled our alarm and we can just start it and then get a log from our receiver. But let's first create the function that actually cancels that alarm, because of course we also want to cancel our alarm, but it's not going to be a private, instead a fun console alarm, in which we also need that same pending intent. So just copy that and then create it here. Why? Because as I said, we can send different actions. So the first action intent.action can be start, and then the second action can be stop. So we do something based on the action in our receiver. Okay, now we just need to cancel it using an alarm manager.cancel, passing our pending intent, and the alarm is cancelled. Now that's it for here. We can also, as I said, set a repeating alarm. Let's do that before actually firing this off. So it can be alarm manager.set repeating. The type is going to be the same. So let me just see where that is. Okay, here it is. Let's copy the same stuff in here, and then we can pass our pending intent. But before that, we have another thing to pass, which is the interval, which is the interval that we want our alarm to be repeating after it actually fires off. So let's say the least you can do is 1 minute. You can't go less than that. So it's going to be 1000 milliseconds times 60, which means a minute. If you go anything less than that, then you get a warning, because it has to be a minute. So let's say now it's 1:26 a.m. and then after 5 seconds this alarm will fire off, and then after every minute it will fire off again. So that's a repeating alarm, and this can be 5 minutes by actually multiplying this by 5. Now you get 5 minutes. So it just depends in your use case. Now let's just schedule this one, and let's go to our activity to actually launch our alarm. The first thing is we need to get an instance of our alarm manager. Is going to be my alarm manager. Actually, that's the wrong one. In fact, it's called underweight alarm manager, passing the context, which is this. Of course, if you have to use this schedule exact alarm permission, then you need to request it right here. In my case, I don't have to, but if you have to, then you need to request that. And I already have a video of how to properly request permissions from the user, which I'm going to leave its link in the description of this video. Now in my screen, I'm going to create simply 2 buttons, one to schedule my alarm and then one to cancel it using a column. Okay, or you know what, let me just copy it and paste it here, because we don't really care about UI, to save some time. So I have a column and I just center my content. I have 2 buttons. The first one is this alarm manager to schedule my alarm. In the second button, I just cancel it. So nothing fancy. I can also put some spacer between them with a height, let's say 30.dp, so we can actually have some space, and let's import dp, and that's it. I just have 2 buttons in my column. Now, what we want to do is go to our receiver, copy this tag, let's go to our logcat right here, and then paste it. Now, let's run the app and see if we actually receive our alarm after 5 seconds. Okay, the app is launching. Okay, just see the app. It's just an app with 2 buttons. Click on the set alarm, which is the first button. Hopefully, let's wait for 5 seconds. And I don't get anything. And I know why, because I need to go to my manifest and register my receiver. I always forget to do that. So let's go here, create some space. I don't know if you can see, so let me just create more space down here. So receiver, my alarm receiver, and also the service. So it's service, alarm service, the type of my service, because probably I also need to specify the type, and special use. Now it should work. Well, I hope. So let's run the app, click on the button, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the alarm is received, as you can see. And this can also happen even if I fully close my app. So let me just delete the logcat or clear it, click on the button, close the app, wait, and it's received. So this actually works without the app being active, and also it will wake the device on. Now let's try actually canceling an alarm. So let's say now we start it and then we cancel it, which means we shouldn't get anything after 5 seconds. And that's exactly what happens, we don't get anything. But now there's just one thing, maybe when I talked about this set repeating, I actually made a little bit of a mistake when I explained it. It doesn't fire off after 5 seconds and then it starts repeating in the interval. No, it will be the target in which it will start the interval, okay? So let's say after 5 seconds, that's when we are going to start counting until 60 seconds or 1 minute passes to then fire off the alarm. So it means it won't fire off after 5 seconds, instead it will fire off after 1 minute, after every minute. So yeah, that's how this set repeating works. And that's how you schedule alarms with an alarm manager. If you are confused between in which case you should use an alarm manager and the work manager, I will leave you a video in the description in which I explained work manager so you could see the differences between those two and which one fits your exact use case. So this is it for this video. See you and bye.